Victor. World-renowned man of peace and attorney for freedom. In a world of coercion and war, a peaceful man stands tall. Now, for your weekly dose of freedom and peace. A peaceful man stands tall. Ladies and gentlemen, the man of peace himself, Marc J. Victor, brings to you the Attorney for Freedom show.
Well, welcome to the show, everybody. Today we're going to talk about guns. I've got Joe, my buddy Joe, as we always have in studio today. I got Mike, who is a friend of mine for, I guess, only about the past 30 years or so.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
Not very long.
He told me 30 and a half, so
I'm just getting to know the
you were
guy.
full of it.
And, of course, my lovely wife, Tracy, is back this week with us.
Hello.
I'm hidden on the.
So, anyways, we need to talk about this gun thing because, our country's going through a difficult period right now. I mean, it's not like we haven't had enough to deal with the politicians doing everything they possibly can to screw up our country's monetary system by continually printing more money and constantly increasing the amount of regulation and taxes and just doing everything they possibly can to really hurt freedom, to destroy our country in terms of what we're about here in America. It's not like we don't have enough to deal with. And then, another crazy lunatic steps up with a firearm and does the unthinkable, this time at Sandy Hook Elementary in Connecticut. And, it's hard to overstate how bad a tragedy this thing was. I mean, it's, if you had said to me that there are human beings on the planet who are capable of taking a firearm to an elementary school. I mean, if you had said, think, what is that?
That is insane.
The most unthinkable thing that a person could possibly do. If we sat around and we tried to come up with something, maybe I would say, okay, here's the most unthinkable thing. Take your firearm into an elementary school and start gunning down 6-year-olds.
Yeah, I think you'd win.
20 of them.
That is ridiculous. And did you hear that there was another event thwarted off here locally?
No, I didn't hear about that.
I don't know all the details, but I heard there was another event that was actually they caught the person. They were doing another one of those sprees.
Well, I'm not surprised I didn't hear about it because you never hear about those, right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, there are lots of events all the time throughout our nation, probably throughout most of the world, where a firearm is used like any other tool can be used, right? I mean, firearms are neutral, right? They could be used for good things, they could be used for bad things, but for whatever reason, you never hear, very rarely hear about when a good person steps up with a firearm and saves lives. I mean, guns do save lives. There are lots and lots and lots of examples. If you're interested in this, don't take my word for anything ever that I say. I would always encourage everybody to do some independent research and just go ahead and check for yourself. There are lots of examples of people, good people with guns, stepping up to save the lives of innocent people who are in danger from idiots like this guy up in Connecticut. So this guy, here we are with another story of a lunatic who did the unthinkable here. And, there's nothing that presents an opportunity for the government to step up and start grabbing our liberties. Nothing like a tragedy,
right,
or an emergency or a war. When people get into this sort of frenzy, when there's a crisis going on, just like September 11th, right? We saw this during September 11th. All you got to do is call it something like the Patriot Act, right? Just call it, name it the Patriot Act, name it an act to accomplish all good things. And the politicians don't even read this stuff. Admittedly so. They didn't even read this stuff. And it's not like somebody sits down and drafts up these, hundreds or thousands of pages of regulation that they just sort of sit up all night, draft and throw. This is stuff that's just sort of sitting on the back shelf. And the gun control people who really are, let me say this about the whole gun control debate. I'm going to ascribe the best of intentions to both sides of this debate and say that both sides really want the same goal. right? Don't we really want the same goal? We want to live in a safe society. We want to live in a free society. We want what everybody wants all over the world, right? We want to live free. We want to enjoy our lives. We want to pursue our happiness. We want to raise our kids. We want our kids to do better than we did. We want to do better than the generation before. And we want to be good to our family and our friends, and we want to help, improve the world. Let's say both sides want that. Both sides want that. I mean, can we? I think we can, as lovers of freedom, as people who recognize the rights of other people to own firearms. I think we can say that even most of the gun control advocates probably still want the same things as us. We only differ in our approach, right? I mean, I think just to make an analogy here, can we say the same thing about the drug war? I mean, let's just talk about methamphetamine for a second. Can't we say, yeah, we probably, both sides, the people who are for the drug war and people who are against the drug war, wouldn't we at the end of the day still like to see fewer people addicted to methamphetamine? I think we would. Both sides want that. We just differ in our approach. We differ in our approach, and I think that we feel the same way, and I think this is the case. What we're experiencing right now today in this debate about guns, we both want the same thing. And what we're saying to the other side, hey guys, your approach, gun control, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it doesn't matter that you're good intentioned. It doesn't matter that there are lots of examples of bad guys who do bad things with guns. It's true. If you could take any of these particular lunatics and say, well, if they didn't have a gun, this wouldn't have happened. That's absolutely true. But gun control, it just doesn't work. You could start with that. There are lots of other things you can say about it, but you could at least start by saying it flat out just does not work. There are no examples. In fact, I'm working on an article right now, as I do frequently, and I was inspired to write something about this whole gun control situation because, people of freedom, we shouldn't sit by silently, sit by idly while those who want to attack freedom are up in arms. They're moving. They're mobilizing. How many times are we going to have to see the commercial with the movie stars saying, never again, or this is it, this is done, never again, never again. You can keep saying never again. You can even sincerely say never again. You can pass any gun control regulation you want, and it still isn't going to work. It still isn't going to work. I mean, take the Adam Lanza situation. First off, this whole thing happened at a gun-free school zone. This whole thing happened in an area where guns are absolutely prohibited by the federal government and have been for a long time. I guess that didn't stop him. They were just prohibited, and it still didn't stop him. It also happened in Connecticut, where there are lots of gun regulations, right? There's waiting periods, and there's permits, and there's background checks, and there's all kinds of rules and regulations. None of them applied to what Lanza did because he took somebody else's gun. He took his mom's gun. So he exempted himself from all of that. And of course, we have laws against shooting other people, right? Laws against murder have been on the books forever. They haven't stopped people. You know how you stop a bad guy with a gun?
Another gun.
You got to use force. Think of to me, the epitome of this situation was when this principal, this really dedicated, and I'll say very courageous, sincere, really wanted to protect the kids principal, when she learned there's a madman in the school who's shooting the kids with a firearm, she did all she could have done, right? She ran in there, charged in there to stop this guy, but because of the federal law, she had zero chance of stopping this guy.
Had she had a gun, things may have been different.
Things would have been different.
Definitely.
Things would have been different.
Sure.
Things would have been different. So what happened? She ran in there and she was also murdered. So now the world is without another probably wonderful person because she was disarmed. How does this help? How does this help? Taking guns away from peaceful people, because that's all you can do. Taking guns away from peaceful, law-abiding people, how does that help? And I was interviewed last night for the local news. They called me up and they said, hey, there's a debate in town because the Attorney General here in Arizona has said enough. We need to start changing things. We need to start getting some guns in our schools. And this, of course, touched off a debate here in Arizona. And the news called me up and said, Mark, we want to come down and interview you. And I said this, and I still feel this. Look, I don't want to put my views on anybody. I don't want to tell anybody else how to live. I don't tell other free people how to live. That's the beauty of living in a free country. If you as a parent want to send your kids to a school that absolutely bans guns, that is your right. There is nobody that I'm aware of, nobody who is saying you as a parent should not have a right to send your kid to a school that bans guns. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. You got every right to send your kid to a school that teaches whatever you want, that abides by any rules you think are appropriate. That's your right as a free parent. That's fine. But who are you to tell me that I can't put my kids at a school where people are armed,
Well, Mark,
where people can protect the kids at the school?
That's democracy, though, Mark. Come on.
But it's not freedom. And that's the point. Freedom is more important than democracy. Democracy and freedom are not the same things. We've gotten so confused in our country about democracy and freedom. If they're not the same. Democracy is mob rule, right? Can we call it what it is?
Yes.
It's mob rule. It's the majority gets to impose its will by force on the minority.
Do we want to start taking calls?
Yeah, we can. Let me just finish this one point.
You got it.
That's what democracy is. And there's a place for democracy. And, you know, in our country, very few things were up for a vote at the beginning of our country. Very few things ought to be up for a vote. There ought to be very few things that the majority ought to decide what the rules are. Why? Because freedom's different. Freedom is the owner decides. Freedom is you decide. If it deals with your body, your money, your time, your property, you decide. We don't need a majority vote on that. And in a sense, freedom and democracy really are incompatible on a lot of levels. And we need to think about that. We need to stop using freedom and democracy like George Bush did. Democracy and freedom, like they're the same things. They're not the same things. Let's go to call.
All right, I'll go ahead and start taking calls.
Yeah.
I see we've got quite a few callers already calling in here.
Good.
And if you're listening out there, 480-745-1033, if you want to make a comment, call in, or if you want to go live on the air and you want to contain yourself and be cool, let's talk. And I want to welcome all our chatters out there. Feel free to throw some chat up there. Hey, Jackie. I like KQCK Lover. That's a great name. Anyway, take it away. Mark J. Victor.
Did you want to take a call? I thought you had a call.
I'm going to start taking some calls.
All right, we're soliciting calls. Yeah, so we need to get this gun thing out there, and we need to talk about the fact that gun control, it just doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is the bad guys, the guys we're really trying to get to, they don't care what the law is. And you can't, it's a fantasy to think that you're going to pass some kind of a rule that says bad guys can't have guns and that that's going to work. We already have that, right? I mean, look at the shooting we just had in New York. I don't know if you're aware, this one didn't get as much attention. There was just a shooting in New York, another lunatic who had been convicted of a crime. I think it was a manslaughter, spent, 16 years or so in prison. He gets released. He gets guns. Now, keep in mind, this guy's a prohibited possessor. Right, under federal law and probably under state law, it certainly would be here in Arizona. This guy's absolutely prohibited from having guns. Prohibited from having guns. He decided he likes to kill people. That's what he said in his letter. He likes to kill people. So he set a fire, and then when the firemen arrived, he took many of his guns, several. He didn't just have one. He had a whole bunch of guns. He took them down and started shooting people. I'm just, there's nothing you can legislate to stop that. There's nothing, you may not be able to stop that. There are some things in life, unfortunately, we can't ensure that that there's just going to be justice everywhere in the world. That's just not the way the world works. And even if we have guns at school, it still doesn't mean that some lunatic's not going to be able to step up and shoot kids out of school. At least we'll have a chance to protect them, though.
And it won't be 26 kids or 25 kids. Maybe it'll just be one person or two, because someone out there will have a gun to stop that lunatic.
Right, and so what I want to know from the
guns save lives.
Yeah, what I want to know from the gun control crowd, and maybe somebody call in and explain this to me, help me understand this. given that I respect your right as a parent to put your kids in a gun-free school zone, and I would do nothing to try to take that right away from you. I respect your right to do that if that's what you think is appropriate. Why is it that you right to put my kids in a school where people with proper training, people who understand how to use firearms, are there? So just in case, just like the president, right? President Obama doesn't travel around in a gun-free zone. He travels around with an armed contingency of people. Why? I mean, if he believes that he's safer without guns anywhere, right? You could make the argument, hey, any of those Secret Service guys could freak out at any time and take a gun and shoot the president. That could happen. And it could, right? Yeah. Any of those Secret Service people at any time could pull out a gun and shoot the president of the United States. But it doesn't happen. Why not? Because first of all, most people aren't lunatics.
Yes.
And you can go pretty far to figuring out, not perfect, but you can go pretty far to figuring out if you're dealing with a stable person. And there are lots of stable people out there. What's so horrible? Why is it that the gun control crowd want to take the right away from me and Tracy as parents to put our kids at a school where at least there's a chance to defend them against what we know is a fact of reality, lunatics with guns? Why is it? I wish somebody would call in and tell me why that's so unreasonable in a free society where I shouldn't have that choice. And also, I'd like to know this. I'm a proud owner of my AR-15. I have an AR-15 assault rifle. I keep it at the house. It's locked up safely in a gun safe where it's been as long as I've had kids. I've never had an incident. It's never been a problem. I can't tell you why I need that weapon. And frankly, I don't have to tell you why I need that weapon. I don't think I need that weapon. I want that weapon. I'm a free American. I got a right to have a weapon. So why is it, gun control advocates, why do you feel like you'd be safer if my AR-15 assault rifle was taken away from me?
First of all, Becky Midler from St. George says, you're a crazy man.
In a good way or a bad way?
I just think she meant in a bad way.
Oh, no.
But she also says guns need to be banned. It's ridiculous to think people need them. Ban them and we will all be safe.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how will we be safe?
Statistics prove that, right, Mark?
That
because,
just doesn't make sense.
You know, Robert from Phoenix, who subsequently called in right before her, said, and he could be talking to Becky for all I know here, how does it make sense to take away guns or ban guns when the only people that are going to have them are going to be the criminals? He said, no way, this is insane.
That's right.
That's correct.
How can we have two opposing sides that different, Mark?
It's very hard to understand. I mean, first off, and again, don't take my word for this. Do a little bit of your research. You live in a country, Becky, right, where this country, there's no ambiguity about what the people who founded this country believed.
Where's St. George? Is that Utah?
Yes.
Gotcha.
We get a lot of calls from Utah.
Gotcha.
I love the Utah callers because I always remind them about what Joseph Smith said. Teach them correct principles and let them govern themselves. One of my favorite quotes of all time. But, you live in a country where there's, I don't know, maybe somebody could make this case. I would love to hear it, that the Founding Fathers somehow, some way didn't believe that free people ought to have an absolute right to keep and bear arms.
As far as I know, Becky, was it Becky? She could be an illegal gun dealer because this is going to drive those prices up and the criminals are going to be paying, they're going to be getting them anyway, right?
It's really hard to understand that position. I wish she was here in studio because I'd like to ask her more about that.
I asked her, will you go on the air? She says, absolutely not.
Well, that's a shame. Because we're friendly. We're
of course.
We're fuzzy, friendly people here, easy to talk to.
No, Mark J. Victor. He is the man of peace. And I'm going to work on, I need to get you some kind of a
tuxedo or
cape
something?
and a tux with just a big man of peace. That would be cool, wouldn't it?
There's
little smiley face.
There are a few things that you could say to me that would I would take as a bigger compliment than a man of peace, because to me that's one of the highest aspirations of human beings. But I'm just trying to understand that position. If you banned all guns, we'd all be safer. I mean, is it that she believes that if there was a gun ban, nobody would have guns?
Well, it worked for the drug war. Why not?
I know, it's really, even to just get over that position, just start from the fact that there's about 300 million guns in just in our country. There's about let's just take, for example, let's not speculate. Let's just take a place that does ban guns, like let's say Mexico. Here's Mexico. It's effectively illegal to have a gun in Mexico. I mean, I realize there are some things in their constitution that say, yes, you can have guns. But the truth is, you really can't have a gun in Mexico. Everybody knows, at least those who live here in Arizona, that if you take your gun to Mexico, you're going to prison. Unfortunately, a brother of mine, another former United States Marine, recently found that out. He took a stupid little pea shooter driving through Mexico, and this guy got arrested and thrown in prison. He just recently got released, and I'm happy to hear that
he was in there for 4 months.
Yeah, he was in there for 4 months. I'm happy to hear that my brother, former Devil Dog United States Marine, found out the hard way that you just can't bring a gun to Mexico. So Mexico's a place where guns are banned. Are they safe? I mean, they don't have any gun violence. I mean, Mexico has more gun violence. And this is not my opinion. Just take a look at the statistics. Pull them out. Pull up the homicide rate, firearm-related homicide rate for Mexico. And what you'll find is Mexico, in a place that bans guns, has a higher gun violence rate than we do here in the United States. So how do you explain that? How do you explain that even within the United States? If you take a state, take Washington, D.C., strictest gun control laws in the United States. That's what gave rise to the Heller case, the very case that just a few years ago determined the shocking proposition that, the Second Amendment, it does protect an individual right to keep and bear arms. But that came out of Washington, D.C., absolutely uncontested, strictest gun control laws in our nation. Did that mean that Washington, D.C. was the safest place in the nation? No. To the contrary, Becky, it was known as the murder capital of the United States. They had the highest gun violence in the United States during a time they had the strictest gun control laws. Why?
And then compare that with a place like Kennesaw, Georgia.
That's what I was just about to say.
It's the opposite.
Kennesaw, Georgia. Yeah, here's another little experiment about gun control. Kennesaw, Georgia, a little town where they passed a law that said every head of household must, it's against the law if you don't have a firearm. Everybody's got to have a firearm. So what happened? The crime rate sharply fell. Sharply and immediately, and stayed that way for decades. And Kennesaw, Georgia, right now, today, has the lowest crime rate of any city in the United States of comparable size.
That's got to be a coincidence.
Cheers to that.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
But just think like a criminal for a second. You're going to break it. Let's say we're going to make a plan to break into somebody's home and do bad things to them and steal their stuff. Is Kennesaw, Georgia going to be our pick?
No.
Washington, D.C.
Washington. Why are we going to pick Washington, D.C.?
Because there's no
unarmed
guns.
citizens.
Yeah.
Easy targets.
Or like maybe Becky's right. Maybe we're going to say, gee, like the cartoon I've got in my office. I wish I had brought it.
Yeah.
It's a picture of these two bad guys, completely decked out with automatic weapons and grenades and everything else.
Face
and their
masks.
they're getting ready to charge into this place to do all kinds of bad things. But there's a sign on the door that says gun-free zone, and they stop and they say, "Oh, geez, now what?" I guess our plans are for. I mean, I guess in theory it makes sense, but it just doesn't work.
Melissa from Chattanooga wanted to comment on your Mexico situation here, and she said, "Look at Mexico. People don't bring guns in. See, it works." What works?
Well, actually, the United States government brought lots of guns in recently, right? I mean, we sent a lot of guns. The United States government in a horrible situation that I think was just punished criminally.
But what was working? I was trying to figure what works there.
What does work?
More
Because
people
every
get
time
killed
I've
by guns there than anywhere.
every time I've driven through, I get very nervous that
It
I'm going to get
works?
pulled over by some M16s.
And you don't have a gun.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Not even a casing. Nothing.
I'd like somebody to tell me this too. Let's assume that there are more, and I believe this, there are still more what I would call good people out there than bad people. There's more good guys than bad guys. So more of those 300 million guns are owned by good guys than bad guys, assuming they're evenly distributed. But there's a lot of good guys with guns out there. Help me understand, what is the benefit to freedom or to safety or to anything for taking guns away from peaceful people? Like my AR-15. How are we going to be safer if my AR-15 assault rifle is taken away from me?
Ted from Anchorage says, ban guns? Go ahead. No one's taking mine. Or there will be another shooting. And what he wanted to say, he said he wanted to clarify. He goes, the shooting will be when they're trying to take my guns away.
No, he's right. I mean, he is right. Look, and he's right. And let me just say this, too, because I hope nobody ever does a show on guns and fails to mention this very important point. We don't like to talk about it, but it's a very important point. The reason for the Second Amendment, it ain't duck hunting.
No.
It's not even self-defense against bad guys. It's because the government has guns. That's the reason our founders wanted us to have guns, because you know what? Governments have killed more people, millions of people, almost 60 million people just in the 20th century, killed by their own gun-grabbing governments.
Mark, we were talking about this a couple days ago when you're talking about the government. We were talking about the Jews, like in Nazi Germany. What about if those Jews had guns?
Yeah, what would have been the harm had the
Knock
Jews...
on your door, excuse me, we're coming to get you.
So to Tracy's point, the Soviets banned guns. They banned guns. And then they murdered 20 million people from 1929 to 1953. The Chinese, they banned guns over there too. And right after they did that, they murdered 20 million of their own citizens from 1948 to 1952. The Germans, part of what Tracy was just talking about, they banned guns. And then they murdered about 13 million of their own citizens from 1939 to 1945. The Turks, they banned guns. They murdered about 1.5 million people from 1915 to, I think it was 1970. I mean, this just hasn't worked out well.
If anyone doesn't believe that, you can go on YouTube and put in Innocence Betrayed. It's a video called Innocence Betrayed that goes over all the shootings and more that have happened in just the 20th century.
I mean, look, folks, I hate to be the bearer of bad news if you're a naive American, but you know, sometimes governments do bad things. You know, the founders referred to the government as a necessary evil. An evil, not a good thing. It's a necessary evil. And Lord Acton, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. This isn't new. The founders, the founders of our country didn't even have the 20th century. The numbers that I just gave, they didn't have any of that. They didn't see what the Soviets or the Chinese or the Germans did. They were just looking back in history from the 1700s back, and they saw the same thing that we saw. Governments sometimes take guns away from their citizens, and then they do bad things to them. Also, there are other reasons as well. It can't be a bad thing to have people in our nation armed if you have a foreign power who's even thinking of invading your country. I mean, anybody who's been in the military is going to tell you one of the toughest things to do ever is going to be to go door to door. If you got to go door to door and deal with an armed population, that's a hard business. It's going to be a much easier business taking over a country where people are not armed. Look at Switzerland. These examples keep going on and on, right? Switzerland, during World War II, would have been a great prize for Hitler. Hitler invaded most of Europe during World War II. Where didn't he invade? He didn't invade Switzerland. Switzerland would have been a great prize for Hitler. Switzerland was packed with gold. Lots of gold in Switzerland. Why on earth did Hitler not invade Switzerland? Switzerland is one of those places on the earth where everybody's got a gun. And they don't just have guns like we have. They've got fully automatic weapons over there. That is a serious, big-time armed population over there in Switzerland. They're much safer as a result of it. And they don't have high gun violence. Lots of these places don't have high culture of violence, and we shouldn't put our head in the sand about it, but it's not because we have guns. Canada's got a very high proportion of guns, very similar to ours. They have a very high history and tradition of gun ownership in Canada, yet they don't have the culture of violence that we have. There are other reasons why we have a culture of violence, but it's not because we got high gun ownership.
Cheryl from Springfield, Missouri says she's got a message for you that's going to change your life.
I hope in a good way.
Are you ready for
this?
I'm ready.
She said it's because of guns that we have all this crime. How can you be pushing this to get guns? Why don't we make it mandatory so each teacher in school has a gun? Maybe even Each student has one gun. She wants you to know, though, you need to find God, but Jesus forgives you for being wrong. Save yourself and repent.
Well, okay. I'm not sure what to say to that.
I'm going to put Springfield up there with St. George.
But look, people, and that's the beauty of a free country. People can say whatever they want to say, and that's fine. But
right.
if you're interested in looking at the facts, there are a lot. I mean, look at Australia, for example. Australia decided to ban guns. This was a complete gun grabber's heaven. In fact, I've got some stats here, and if I could just find them, I haven't actually. I just thought about it this second. I don't have the number. Maybe I'll find them by the end of the show here. But Australia absolutely banned guns, and they grabbed a lot of guns. Yeah. They took hundreds.
But it was voluntary, and people turned them in.
People turned them in to comply with the law. Mm-hmm. But they banned a lot of guns in Australia. And did it help? No. It didn't help. It didn't make them safer at all. In fact, here it is right here. Australia, they banned all semi-automatic firearms, including many rifles and shotguns. They did this. This is an ancient history. They did this in 1997. A gun grabber's dream. How many guns did they take out of Australia and destroy? 640,000 firearms confiscated and destroyed. People trusted their government, and they said, well, the law's the law. So they walked them in, and the government actually destroyed 640,000 firearms, right? What happened? Robbery increased by 69%. Assaults with firearms increased by 28%. Gun-related murders increased 19%. Home invasions increased 21%. Why? Why? Because let me tell you who didn't bring their guns in. The bad guys didn't say, oh, the law's changed. The rule is now I got to bring my gun into the gun. They didn't do that. And what they said was, wow, things changed in a good way for me because that guy down the street who might have been armed before, now I know he's not. I can just march in and take what I want.
Yeah, it's not like they say, oh, the rules have changed for rape and pillage now.
Yeah. So, I mean, did they get safer? I mean, it doesn't really matter wherever you look. And by the way, this was interesting, too. And I didn't know this until I started researching for my article, which, by the way, is going to be available soon, maybe in the next few days on my website, which I never give out. But you might not be surprised to know that you can get a hold of me just by going to attorneyforfreedom.com. If you just go to attorneyforfreedom.com or just put Marc Victor into Google, I'm really easy to find and get a hold of. And by the way, if you disagree with me, I'm happy to hear from you. Let's just have a rational discussion about it. And if I'm wrong, I'll the first one to tell you I'll change my position. But let me just mention this for a second. Here's some guys that seem pretty neutral. Here's what I would call them: the most unbiased, respected, and professional scientific and research organizations. They started looking at this. The National Academy of Sciences, right? Our best and brightest scientists, the people whose goal it is not to make a political case, but to analyze and get to the truth. They reviewed in 2004, they reviewed 253 gun-related journal articles, 99 books, 43 government publications, which evaluated 80 gun control measures. And they did all this for the purpose of determining the answer to one question. Do gun control laws, do they actually work? Do they reduce violence? Do you know, after that huge project by our best scientist at the National Academy of Sciences, but they could not find not even one of the 80 gun control measures that they looked at. They couldn't find one single regulation that reduced either violent crime or even suicide or even accidents. They couldn't find one thing that reduced any of these, but it didn't stop with them. In 2003, the Center for Disease Control, another group that's generally looking to just get to the truth, the Centers for Disease Control, they looked at ammunition bans, restrictions on acquisition of firearms, waiting periods, registration, licensing, child access prevention, and zero tolerance laws. They analyzed all of these. What did the Centers for Disease Control find out? Absolutely no evidence that any gun control laws reduced any gun violence. And the same is true of the foreign groups that have researched this. In Australia, you might figure out they were pretty interested in analyzing this stuff. In 2008, They released a peer-reviewed study at the University of Sydney, reached exactly the same conclusions that the National Academy of Sciences reached, that the Centers for Disease Control released, which is this: gun control. Whether you love it, hate it, whatever you think of it, it just doesn't work.
And thank you, Jackie, out there in the chat for all your passion in your posts there. We certainly appreciate it. I know people are reading it. I know you're not getting much of a response out there, because what can people really say? And thank you, Jennings, out there from L.A. for calling in and wants to let everyone know that people need to be realistic. We need guns. That's freedom. Should we ban dogs? The drug prohibition just helps the cartels. Thank you, Mr. Victor. Finally, a smart attorney with a real public mission. Thanks from all of us here who want to be safe in L.A.
Well, I really appreciate that. But, none of this stuff's really hard.
No.
And I'll say this, too. You don't even need to be smart about it. It's a good friend of mine, Ernie, who was here a couple of shows ago, says, freedom is the answer. What's the question? The bottom line is freedom works pretty good. Liberty works really well. The free market works great. Individual rights and responsibilities, that stuff works great. I mean, if you're interested in having a society where people are free to figure out for themselves what it is they want to do with their life and then accomplish that mission peacefully, live and have people prosper and have goods and services be sold for the fair prices, and you want land to rise to its highest and best use, all these great goals, how do you accomplish it? You don't regulate any of it. You don't need to regulate any of it. Freedom resolves all of these questions. And so many of the problems that we have in our society, they're really just a result of the government creating the problems. The government creates a problem and then says, we have this horrible problem. We've now got a government solution. And of course that makes sense, right? I mean, if you're in the government and all you know is a government job and all you want to do is justify the role of government or increase the size and scope of government, then you have to continually keep explaining to people and convincing people why they need the government, why they need to be told what to do. But to my fellow Americans, do you really need somebody telling you how to run your life? I mean, do you really need that? I'm just wondering.
No, and it's the same as like an owner of a restaurant or something. They have a right to refuse service or whatever. And just like a smoke shop or a liquor store or a Circle K, how many times have you seen where the guy comes in with the gun and then the owner or the cashier guy pulls out his gun too? Guess what happens?
There's lots of examples of it.
Who's running now?
The bad guy is turning and running, and he's gone.
And then what about that video we saw on YouTube of the internet cafe? 30 to 40 people in there. 2 guys come in with assault rifles. They could have just mowed them all down. They started just squawking at first. Hey, guys, give us all your money. Do all this, blah, blah, blah. Here's this guy, old guy, looks like he's about 70, 80 years old, creeps up,
swings right into action,
gun,
right?
And he's like, bang, bang, and oh my gosh, what did these guys do?
The only problem was he didn't have a big enough gun.
But did they run? It didn't matter.
I know, but
it didn't matter.
They fall, but they kept getting back up. I'm like,
by the way, if you want to see this video, it's on YouTube, and it's going to be a link in my article, which right now has a working title, and it may be the final title. I am a peaceful AR-15 assault rifle owner. I'm expecting to put the finishing touches on my article in the next couple days. It'll be on my website, Attorney for Freedom. And that YouTube video, I think it may be in a footnote, but it's in my article. Take a look at it.
That's what guns are for.
That's what. Yeah, 2 knuckleheads come rolling into the Palms Cafe.
One person in there out of 45 people had a gun.
Older guy too.
Had a gun and saved all of those guys' lives, including himself. And they walked. They ran out of there. The 2 guys.
It's really a great video. I watched it a few times. Dude didn't take 1 sec. He looked. He saw those guys. He swung his chair around. He whipped out his gun. He took out his gun. He started discharging. He walked right by the other peaceful people. Yep. Right. He discharged it. Those 2 knuckleheads. The second they saw that guy with the gun,
babies.
To say they were scrambling, they were falling all over the place, tripping over stuff, knocking stuff over, anything they could do to get out the front door. What a good story, huh?
But you don't ever hear about those stories.
What a good story. I mean, wouldn't you? I'd love to have that guy on the air and just talk about that incident because, I mean, look, you can't deny the fact that there's going to be bad guys and they're going to have guns, right? The good part of that story is there was one guy with a handgun, and boy, he put potentially saved everybody.
He did.
Maybe that was a story of a mass murder of innocent people that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But there's another point here too. Tracy hasn't always been such a pro-gun person.
No.
And she really hasn't. And
I hated guns.
Gosh. We've been together 6.5 years, and I got to admit, I've been kind of a failure in terms of trying to get her interested in guns. It's not, and by the way, it's not that I'm really not a gun guy. I'm a freedom guy. I have guns just like I might have a hammer or a screwdriver or any other tool. I'm not a guy that sits around and gets excited about guns or anything like that. I think if you got a gun, you need to be proficient with it to some extent. You need to have some understanding of what the law is. But I've tried unsuccessfully to get Tracy interested in firearms for quite some time until just recently.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's a Marine. He likes the big guns. He likes his assault rifle. He takes me to the gun range about 6 years ago. Okay, let's go shooting because you need to know how to protect yourself, Tracy. When you're in the house by yourself, you need to learn how to protect yourself. So we go to the gun range. He puts a 40 in my hand. I almost, fall down. I'm like, oh my gosh, these things are so scary. I don't care. There's no one's coming to the house anyways. I don't need a gun, So that was my attitude because they were very scary to me. I was one of those, we don't need guns, But just recently we went to the gun range and he had one of his friends that actually taught me how to use the gun, gave me a little bit of education. Just even holding the gun before I was very scared of, but he gave me lots of training on how to hold it. Don't put your finger on the trigger because I had a fear that I was going to shoot myself by accident. That was really one of the things because guns were just super scary to me.
Well, and I got a lot smarter because I didn't stick the 40 in your hand.
Yeah, he actually, at the gun range, bought me a 22 for Christmas. Yay.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. And I knew it. Now I know my gun. I know how to use it. I know how to load it. I know how to shoot it. And wow, what a difference. Just the education and just being familiar with your gun and knowing what the purpose of it is for.
And it's hard for me to get into the mind of some of these gun control people, but I try to do that. And I think really it's this sort of unjustified irrational fear of guns, like this thing that could start at any moment, start blowing rounds in any direction. And it's just ignorance about a gun. And I saw this happen with Tracy when she got the 22. It didn't have the same kick as my 40 with the hollow tips, but she got a little instruction, and soon this hunk of metal, this mysterious hunk of metal that kills people, it went from that to something that she could control, something that was completely safe. She knew what the rules were about not putting her finger on the trigger. All guns are loaded. Be aware of what's behind you.
Yeah.
Don't put your sights on it unless you're planning to destroy it. I mean, we had all these various rules, and in a very short period of time, she became what I would call rational about firearms, and it became just a tool. It just
took the fear away.
It's a tool, but you respect what it's used for. And even that day, we brought some of our kids there, and they're boys, so they want, guns, play guns. And wow, what a difference of what they feel now. They understand what a gun is for, what it does, what the power of it is, and they don't look at guns the way they used to. Now they respect them. And
let me give you an analogy here, maybe a little bit lighter. I don't know. You'll tell me. Angus is probably scared of cars. Now, some of you may not know
You just read my mind.
Some of you may not know who Angus is. Angus is our, I don't know, Joe, 225-pound English Mastiff.
He's the Lamborghini of dogs.
He's a big boy.
That's another reason why I didn't think I needed a gun, because he was 200 pounds. If anybody comes to our door, he's going to scare him away. But.
Now, Angus doesn't know how to drive a car. But Angus had occasion in his life to get into a car and drive. Tracy left the truck sitting in our backyard one time, right by our block fence, and Angus just took it upon himself to stick his big rear end up in the driver's seat, and he was moving his huge body around, and he knocked the gear selector gauge from park into reverse, and the truck took off going backwards and hit the wall and cracked our block wall. Fortunately, nobody was injured, but I bet it probably scared Angus a little bit.
Oh, yeah. He's not going to want to just get in the car.
He's probably scared of cars. This thing could at any moment start going backwards, smash you into a wall. But if we could teach Angus about how cars work, they don't just spontaneously start going backwards. There's a reason the car went backwards.
Yeah, the car was on.
Yeah, and
I let him in.
But if you could understand how the tool, the car, operates, it ceases to become a real scary thing. It's easy to understand.
You know, amazingly, I was thinking about Angus, which I do quite frequently. But if somebody was going to break into your house and they knew you had Angus, would they go to your neighbors? I mean...
Well, it depends if they knew Angus.
Yeah, but if they just knew you had a dog, a big dog, for anybody that has a big dog, criminals aren't looking to get eaten by big dogs. They're not looking to get shot.
Yeah,
they're looking for an easy target.
Yeah.
Angus is probably the most terrifying, singly terrifying dog anybody who didn't know him could ever think to see. I mean, if you looked at Angus,
for sure,
his teeth are this big. They're humongous. He's like made out of iron-plated tank.
He would eat someone.
He's huge.
At least slobber on him anyway.
I just had a disturbing call from Frida from Omaha, Nebraska, and it actually and she was very emotional and very upset. And I can understand why. So let me take just a second to tell you her little story here, and it's disturbing. I was involved in a robbery/home invasion in 2005. I was lucky to have my 357 in my dresser. My husband was killed when he went downstairs. 2 other children in the house. She managed to shoot one of the criminals, and the others ran off. She still has her kids, her 2 kids, and herself, and she knows for sure that they would all be dead. Yeah. For sure. Now, she didn't kill one of the criminals. She didn't even hit one of them. But she shot at one of them, and they took off.
Oh, jeez.
Now, if there was a gun ban, they would for sure be dead.
All 4 of them.
Along with how many other people have gone through and will go through this same problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's, unfortunately, life is filled with all kinds of bad things. Some of them are sort of natural disasters, and there's very little we can do. Although, we're still doing better. I mean, humanity does better at building bridges, and we have somewhat earthquake-proof buildings now, so we still improve in those areas. But there are so many things that we have bad guys, we have bad people. I mean, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I've been doing this for 19 years. I represent people in major felony cases, and I'm here to tell you there are bad guys out there. And there's nothing you can do. You can't pass a law to outlaw bad guys. So bad people do things. At least as a free person, as an armed person, she had a fighting chance. I feel horrible that it wasn't 100% successful, and she lost her husband, and she can never get that back. No. That's terrible. It would be like what happened at Sandy Hook. We got 27 people total dead in that experience, and that's horrible. We can't get any of them back. Maybe if there were guns there. I don't know if the first shot would have been a shot from a good guy stopping this lunatic, but say it's not. Say there were 3 people dead that he was able to kill before somebody. 3 people is still horrible. It's a terrible tragedy, but it's better than 27. At least there's a chance to stop somebody. I mean, to think of, we've had lots of these. There were the subway shootings in New York years ago where people can just take a gun down on the subway and just start walking through the car and just plop, plop, just start. And
that's in New York, it's
guns are banned.
Yeah, guns are banned.
All you can do is sit there and hope he doesn't choose to shoot you. I mean, what a horrifying, terrifying situation. And nobody is saying you have to carry a gun. Nobody's saying that. All we're saying is, if as a free, peaceful person you choose to carry a gun, right? And you can do so responsibly, peacefully, safely, with some training, that kind of thing. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? It was good that she had a gun. It was. Yeah. I don't know if it was her husband who encouraged her to get that gun, but what a interesting state of affairs. If she wouldn't have had the gun otherwise, and her husband was the person who encouraged her to get the gun. He died because he went downstairs. I mean, presumably didn't have his gun. I don't know what the circumstances were, but for whatever reason, she had a gun, and she survived, and her kids survived, and they lived to see another day thanks to their gun. Why isn't that story a big story?
Yeah, right.
Why isn't that up? I mean, there's a
That,
lot.
that should be front page.
In fact, in my article, and I could sort of tick through them. There are really lots of these. I don't know if you got another caller queued up or
No, but we had a call from Milton.
Okay.
Milton from Hermosillo, Mexico, who said,
good.
"Great show, keep up the real word." And
Oh.
I just wanted to say, "Great show." And
Thanks, Milton.
Milton from Hermosillo. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
let me just. I didn't know that we had people in Mexico. Let me just say, just pause a second about Mexico. I love Mexico.
We love Mexico.
We go
Oh,
to
yeah,
Mexico
me too.
all the time. We love. I say to Tracy every time we go. I said, "Boy, if we could just restructure things here, this place could be the superpower of the world." What a beautiful country! The resources that they have, the weather, the beaches. They got a lot of good, hard-working people down there who
people
want.
are wonderful.
Oh my God, we love it. Even the people who come from Mexico here to Arizona, I love to employ them. They're such hard workers. So many of them honest, good, wonderful people. That country right there is a powder keg of good stuff ready to just blow. But it's frustrating to me because we have such horrible laws, and I'm speaking specifically about the drug laws, and I'm talking about immigration policy.
Maybe we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah, we should talk about that as well, because if we could just end this ridiculous drug war, if we could do two things, if we could end the ridiculous drug war, and by the way, this is something, I don't know if there are reasonable people on the other side of this one, because I don't know what is possibly the argument on the other side to maintain the drug war. I mean, we could talk about the drug war anytime, but that is, my God, that is the biggest, most clearly failed, horrible, ridiculous, immoral, disgusting, horribly expensive project ever. If we could end that lunacy, and fortunately I think it's going to end at some point here soon, but if we could get that ended, and we could also go back to a more reasonable immigration policy, something like what we had in the early 1900s, late 1800s, where we welcomed people who wanted to come to the United States. We didn't give them any benefits. We didn't give them any welfare. We didn't give them any programs. What we gave them was an opportunity to be an American. Come on in and pursue your happiness.
Didn't even give them housing.
Nothing.
If they knew someone coming off of the boat, great, that, or they'll work for their shelter or whatever. That's exactly right.
My grandfather, and I've got the boat manifest, came in 1904. He declared himself as a tin worker. He had $10 to his name, and he walked in. I'm sure they said, good luck. Good luck. If we had a policy that we said people who are peaceful, who want to come to the United States to pursue a better life, you don't need to hire some lawyer for 10 grand. You don't need to wait years and years and years. You're not getting anything. You're not getting any benefits. You're not getting any of that stuff. That's not what America's about. But if you want to come here and just work, be part of the economy, buy things, right? I mean, people who are against immigration, they forget that these guys buy stuff, right? They buy toiletries, they buy food, they do jobs, they engage in contracts, they do good things. I mean, look, for all of the immigration we had in the late 1800s, early 1900s, where's the downside? It was wonderful for our economy. We could have that again. So if we had a reasonable immigration policy and we ended the drug war, we could go to Mexico without any problems.
Definitely. And that's a good topic that we'll talk about next week.
Yeah, because really, in case you didn't know, that's why you're having the violence in Mexico, because you have struggles between drug lords over who's going to get to move drugs. You have the government on one side, and you have these horrible conflicts going on in society.
Or what about here, Mark? I mean, yeah, we have gun violence, but is it more of the guys that are going in schools and shooting people and doing stuff? Or is it gang violence, drug violence? That's really where it is.
It's a very good point.
You never hear about, once in a blue moon, we hear about, the theater shooting. We'll hear about this, but most of the gun violence is related to gangs or drugs. That's where it really is.
It's a really a very important point. I mean, it's true we hear about these awful shootings, but if you look at the stats, they're really not relative to other reasons people get killed. They're not the giant problems. I mean, they're so horrible because they're so completely unjust and they're preventable. And so it's the law that creates the situation.
Probably
But
more people getting killed in a car.
Yeah.
Are we going to ban cars? Are we all taking buses?
Right.
I mean, what are we doing here?
But if you look at the gun-related violence, and I challenge everybody to do this. I said at the beginning of the show, we have a culture of violence, and I think that there is a variety of reasons for this. Bad parenting among them. Bad parenting among them. We got to become better parents. And I'm pausing on that for a second. We need to stop looking to the government for everything. We need to stop thinking that a cradle-to-grave government is going to fix everything. But let me make this one point, and I'll get right to you, Joe. If you look at the countries that have crazy stuff going on with the drug war, look at the drug-related countries. Look at Colombia. Look at Mexico.
Honduras.
Look at Honduras. Look at all those countries. And then ask yourself, why is the rate of violence so high? Our drug war is contributing to so much violence. If you want to start fixing our culture of violence, get the government out of everything. Let's start respecting the rights of people to live their lives peacefully. Let's start getting back to this notion that initiating force against other people is wrong, and let's end the drug war.
And I would love some of you callers to actually come on live on the air with me. Don't be afraid. I am happy to give the message, and it's not the same, though. I mean, I can give it to Mark, but if he hears your stories and hears what you have to say, it just makes more of an impact. Anyway, Rhonda from Austin, Texas, another disturbing story. She says, I was raped in 1999. If I had a gun, I would have been fine. I could not overpower the crackhead with a knife. I had plenty of times I could have pulled out a gun. He never even took my purse. I just wasn't strong enough. I never go anywhere without my gun, and I'm still in counseling. My life was destroyed. My marriage was destroyed. I lost my kids, and I'll never be the same. But I always carry my gun. Thanks a lot for doing the show.
Wow.
I mean,
wow, horrible story. You know, what was her name again?
Rhonda from Austin, Texas.
Man, thanks for calling in, Rhonda. There's two really important points in there. One of those points that I always make to Tracy, and I put this out there to not just the women but everybody. I mean, I see these stories a lot, especially as a criminal defense lawyer. Don't wait till after you're a victim to get it figured out that there's bad guys in the world. Yeah. Don't wait. I mean, I'm telling you, there's bad guys in the world. Just because you have been fortunate and nothing horrible and horrific has happened to you, and I hope it never does. But just because nothing bad has happened to you doesn't mean that nothing bad ever will. Don't wait until you're a victim to then start figuring out that you should have a gun.
And she made it clear to tell me she was on the other side. She absolutely was strongly against guns, and her whole family has been for a very long time. And this one situation that happened, she wishes she would have been on the other side.
Yeah, before then.
For guns.
Joe, there's something about being human, and I think this is something I've seen. The older I get, the more I notice this concept here, that something about us that we don't have quite the same ability to appreciate something that happens to somebody else until it happens to us. We don't really quite learn like from the experience of other people like we should, but if it happens to us, now we get it. And yeah. I don't know why. I mean, Rhonda's story is a powerful story. Why? And Rhonda, I have a lot of sympathy for you, and I get it. But I just wish you weren't the first person to have been raped. Yeah. I wish that you had learned from somebody else's rape that happened before your rape, so you had a gun so you didn't get raped. So for everyone else, for all the other women out there who haven't been raped, please learn from Rhonda's story. But the second point in there that's important, and I don't want it to just slide by. Stuff like this doesn't slide by on the Attorney for Freedom show. And this goes to the people who called up earlier that would talk about how wonderful the world it would be if we could ban all guns. Rhonda wasn't raped by a bad guy with a gun.
With a knife.
Rhonda was raped by a bad guy with a knife. With a knife. So what happens, even if you can ban all guns? What are you going to do with Rhonda? What are you going to do with the guy who gets the knife? How's she supposed to stop the guy with the knife?
Well, we ban all knives, too. Don't you know the answer?
Do we ban all knives?
And she did make another point. I didn't write it down because she was really going on. She says, I had mace on me, and I was afraid to pull it because I had heard, and she said the guy was an African American. She had heard that mace didn't work properly or pepper spray on African Americans, so she was afraid she was going to get stabbed. And she was so petrified, she was afraid to pull her pepper spray or mace.
Yeah, I mean, it's an important
But she
point.
said she would have pulled a gun.
Yeah. And she probably she probably didn't even have to shoot the guy. Like the last one, the warning shot worked. Sometimes the mere presence of a gun will stop the person. But so, it's not just bad guys with guns. Bad guys have lots of capacity to do bad things with lots of different tools or no tools at all, right? I mean, I'm sure there are lots of women who get raped by guys without any weapons, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to stop rapes just because you ban guns. And so, I mean, keep that in mind. The problem of bad guys doing bad things is still a problem. Whether they got guns or not, it's still a problem. And what about all the other bad things that have occurred? I mean, September 11th was bad guys with a plane, right?
I want to mention one thing too. Something she said. I'm sure it was something she heard, but I don't think it's true. Pepper spray doesn't work on African Americans. That sounds so racist. Not that she meant that. I'm sure she probably heard it and probably believed it, but it's not true. I mean,
no, it's certainly not true. I'm glad you made the point, Mike. I mean, I was when I was in Marine Corps boot camp at Parris Island, we had something very close to that, and we had the CS gas in the gas chamber. And I got to tell you, I went to boot camp with and all the Marines out there know what I'm talking about, with a lot of dark green Marines, because in Marine Corps boot camp you're light green or you're dark green. I'm gonna tell you, those dark green Marines, they were feeling the chemicals as much as the light.
That has nothing
no
to do with
difference
race.
at all.
No, race has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it's certainly possible she pulls her mace and maybe she doesn't hit this guy in the eyes and it upsets him and he does stab her. You don't know.
That could happen.
You don't know what's going to happen. But I'm happy she survived it. I feel horrible about all the fallout that happened in her life, and I'm glad she's getting some counseling for it. But bad guys with planes, bad guys with bombs, right? We had the incident that happened with Timothy McVeigh. That wasn't a gun. That was explosives, right? Wasn't a fertilizer bomb or something like that? And there's bad guys with chemicals and poison who can poison.
There's bad guys with cars that drive cars into buildings.
There's bad guys with cars that drink alcohol. I mean, there's a lot of people who are killed because people don't think and they drink alcohol and they drive their car down the road. So, I mean, the point is there are lots and lots and lots of bad things that can happen in the world. And, trying to pass regulations that we already know are completely ineffective. Not only that, they're immoral. I mean, we need to make that point, too. It's just simply immoral to think that you're going to pass legislation taking everybody's gun. And then how are you going to take the fellow who's in Alaska who said, I'm not giving up my... What are you going to do? Are you going to charge into his house? And are you going to invade the sanctity of his home, a peaceful man, and take his gun without his permission?
And just allow the people that just got their guns taken away to be sitting ducks anywhere.
Is that how you're going to teach people to live, by initiating force against peaceful people to take their guns? I mean, I hope the gun control people think about this for a second, because you want a peaceful society, yet you're supporting notions that say we're gonna initiate force against peaceful people and take their property from them, whether they like it or not. And is this how you're teaching people to be peaceful with one another? If you really want peace, then support peace. If you want peace, support peace. Don't just sing. Tracy and I were in London not too long ago, and we both love the Beatles, and I think I'm safe in saying we love Led Zeppelin more. Do we love Led Zeppelin more than the Beatles?
I don't know about that.
All
They're
right,
pretty close.
All right, they're close, but I love Led Zeppelin. I love the Beatles, but I love Led Zeppelin more than I love the Beatles. Maybe people will call in and settle this. I don't know. We can agree that Led Zeppelin and the Beatles are both better than the Stones, though, right?
Absolutely.
I like the Stones. But anyways, so we went to a Beatles tribute in London, and it was really a good show. We were having a good time. And it got to this one point where everybody was standing up and singing, all we are saying is give peace a chance. Right?
And you're looking at these guys like, seriously?
Yeah, I mean, I was really kind of frustrated by it, because it's so easy to say you're for peace, right? I mean, who's for peace out there? Everybody listening to the show, raise your hand. See that, Joe?
The same ones that raise their hand for freedom.
Yeah, everybody's raising their hand. You see them all out there listening to their computers on our station?
I see them.
They're all raising their hand. they're all for peace. But it's so easy to say you're for peace or to sing all we are saying is give peace a chance. But I had just wondered how many people in that room that were singing all we are saying is give peace a chance who were supporting wars and are supporting policies that initiate force against peaceful people. And so for all you gun control people who say you're for peace, I mean, either be for peace or stop saying you're for peace. Okay? Either be for peace. Don't ever support things that are not peaceful. And taking guns away from peaceful people who own them without hurting anybody or without causing a risk to anybody, taking guns away from people who don't want to give up their property is not peaceful. So stop saying you're for peace. Or do the right thing. Be for peace. Be for peace. Don't support anything that's not consistent with freedom and peace. Because, folks, I got to tell you, the reason I don't talk about peace as much as I should is because peace is a further goal. We're not even close to peace. We can't even figure out freedom yet. Because if you can't get freedom, if you can't get the notion that that it's wrong to coerce your neighbor, right? It's wrong to coerce your neighbor. If you can't even get the freedom notion, we're not even talking about the peace thing yet, right? So if you say you're for freedom, at least be for freedom, and don't throw around peace lightly. Peace is a big deal. If you're really for peace, just do me a favor on this. If you can't support peace, stop pretending. Stop being a fake peace person. Stop being a peace wimp. Peace isn't easy.
Peace wimp.
A peace wimp, right? If you're for peace, are you big enough to accept the notion that other peaceful people can do things, as long as they're peaceful, that you don't agree with? I call them freedom wimps all the time, right? The people who say they're for freedom, but yet they can't possibly deal with the fact that their neighbors are doing something that they don't do, and so they outlaw. It's not consistent with freedom or peace.
And I just have to say to you guys calling in, I certainly appreciate it, but the last 4 calls in a row, I mean, I will not take people, yelling at me and swearing at me and stuff.
What are they saying, Joe?
What? People on both sides. On both sides, though, people are, for guns, and they're yelling at me, and I just can't. I don't have a screener here. I screen the calls, guys. So
if you guys know Joe, he's like Angus. He's just this sweet guy. He can't take yelling, so don't yell at Joe.
Yeah, don't yell at me, and I'm happy to relay the message or put you on the air. We want to hear what you got to say.
Your point doesn't become more clear because you yell.
Right, exactly. So I'm going to get the phones back on here and take some more calls. Just be aware. Please.
But why are people getting so worked up about this? Why can't we talk about this rationally? Right? Why can't really
peacefully?
Yeah. Why can't we talk about it peacefully? I'd like to hear. I want to hear from some of the gun control people. I want them to explain to me why they feel safer if my AR-15 is taken away by force.
But explain it in a rational, non-rabid way.
Yeah. Help me understand. How is it that you're going to be safer if I don't have my AR-15 and my .40 caliber? Tell me why Tracy's .22 should be taken away from her. Tell me why, was it Rhonda who called earlier who had been raped? Tell me why Rhonda's better off. That's what I want to know. Everybody who's been listening, who heard Joe relate Rhonda's story, just to recap, Rhonda called in and said that she was raped by a guy with a knife. And she didn't have a gun. And in fact, she was on the other side of the gun debate. She didn't like guns, didn't carry a gun, and she was unable to stop this horrible criminal who raped her, and it really affected her life. She lost her marriage and her kids, and she's still in counseling today, but now she carries a gun. Rhonda carries a gun. So help me understand, gun control advocates, why Rhonda should not be allowed to carry her gun, why Rhonda ought to be, again, vulnerable to be raped by some guy with a knife.
But like you said, Mark, learn from other people's mistakes. What if, unfortunately, these gun grabbers or these, people that want to ban the guns, what if something unfortunate happens to them? Is that when you're going to say, oh, yes, now people should have guns?
No, they're going to call the police, just like they did at the Sandy Hook Elementary. I mean, they called the police. And, I don't criticize the police. The police, look, we can't expect the police to be everywhere. We
No.
can't expect them to be everywhere.
What's the saying? When seconds count, the police are just minutes away.
Yeah, and then that's not even a criticism of the police. I mean, let's ascribe the best of intentions to the police, and there's a lot of good policemen out there and women. And I say that as a criminal defense lawyer. Okay, I call them as I see them. There's a lot of good officers out there, peace officers. I see them all the time. That's also not to minimize the fact that there's bad cops out there too, right? There's good and bad out there, like anything else. But why is that a better situation to have to wait and cower and hide in the closets and hope that the bad guy with the gun doesn't rape you, doesn't shoot you, doesn't steal your stuff? Why is that better? And by the way, why are police so special? Are we really? All we're really saying is when you need help, you need somebody with a gun to show up and help. Isn't that really what you're saying? Even the gun control people are saying, "Hey, I mean, are you in favor of disarming the police?" That's what I want to know. If we're all safer without guns, let's disarm the police. Is that what you're saying? We should not have guns. Even the police shouldn't have guns. Or are you saying no? I still want to have someone with a gun show up and protect me.
Ironic, isn't it?
I mean, I don't understand the position.
No, but what is you found something on the average time for a cop to get there, about like 6 minutes or so?
Yeah.
In 6 minutes with someone with an assault rifle or something, all those kids that he killed probably was within 6 minutes.
Well, and remember, the only reason he stopped was because he chose to stop.
And yeah, you're right about that.
He shot himself. I mean, this idiot Lanza, he shot himself. What if he hadn't chosen to shoot himself? Would we have 28 dead, 29 dead? How many people would be dead today? I mean, eventually the guy with the gun, with the badge in this case, shows up and shoots the bad guy. That's how you stop a bad guy with a gun. With a gun. So how many more should have died? I mean, I guess we should be fortunate. I'm sure there's at least one person alive right now who was at Sandy Hook Elementary who's alive for one reason only, that the idiot with the gun chose voluntarily to not shoot that person but to shoot himself instead. That's sad and disgusting.
Linda M. from Cleveland, Ohio, called in wanting to let you know why they should be banned. And I don't quite understand this point, but Linda's a police officer. She says, I'm a police officer and guns should be banned because people get mad or upset and go buy guns or take their guns and go crazy to prove their point.
Well, but
And then she says, if they had a chance to think about it or not have access, they could have the time to cool down, and we, the police, could take care of the problem, or they just wouldn't go on their rampage.
Well, police sometimes do bad things with guns too. Is she in favor of banning the police from having guns? I mean, why should they be a protected class?
Wow.
Yeah, and it just doesn't. I mean, I don't know.
All I can say is wow.
Am I missing? Yeah. Am I missing something here? I mean, I'm sure there are.
I'm missing it too.
Look, there's probably some.
Most police officers would not even agree with that.
No,
but
I'm sure there's probably some instances and examples of people who were upset, who bought guns, who were hot-tempered, who did something bad with them. I mean, there are. Look, I will concede there are examples of people who do bad things with guns, but this isn't second grade, everybody. This isn't second grade. This is a free country called America. It doesn't mean that when one person does something bad, now everybody's got to be punished. Does that make sense? It really doesn't even make sense in second grade, does it?
Yeah, we don't even do that with the kids. If one person does something bad, we're not going to punish all of the kids.
Somebody out there said the Connecticut shooting had 3 shooters, not 1.
Well, if it did, that's news, I think, to everybody.
So did you hear there were 3 shooters and not 1? And then we've got somebody said Lanza, yes, and then they ran after one in the woods and had another face down on cement outside the school.
Well, that didn't make the news, but
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it.
Ironically, my daughter does this. She has a duct tape business, and one of her little friends, my daughter was going through her stuff, sending something out. She goes, "Oh my gosh, isn't this the town that had that shooting?" So she has a friend in Connecticut that lives in that town. So I said to my daughter, I said, maybe you ought to ask her any questions you have, So she did. And apparently, I said, I guarantee that kid knows somebody who got shot. And sure as heck, the kid went to the other school. I guess there's 2 schools there. the kid went to the other school and had several of their personal family friends, they were killed.
The problem with something like this, too, is every time something like this happens, conspiracy theories always come out on this. I mean, I've heard thousands of theories already on this. Everything from the movie Batman, predicted this.
It's the MSG in the food.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly, chemtrails.
Well, and I'm not even really sure it matters. I mean, even if whether there were one or there were three or what kind of a gun was used, it really doesn't matter, right? Because there's lots of variations of the same story. Bad guys do bad things with guns, and that's a fact of life, and we're stuck with that. And we're stuck with that whether or not we ban guns or we keep guns or whatever we do. Bad guys also do things with knives and with cars and with bombs and with poisons and with airplanes and with everything. Bad guys do bad things, and we live in a world where bad people are able to do bad things. That's just life.
And actually, the thing bad people use the most, according to the FBI, is a baseball bat.
Really?
Yes. Statistics.
Wow.
Go check it out. More people use baseball bats to commit crimes than do guns. Yep.
Wow, I didn't know that. But, I mean, it sure doesn't surprise me. I mean, people do bad things with their hands. And so we need to just... I mean, I would love for this gun debate to advance to a slightly different point, which is, can we all agree, no matter what we do, we're going to have bad guys who do bad things with guns? I mean, I think we're stuck with that. I mean, look, prohibited possessors get guns, right? Even guys in prison sometimes get guns. There are guys who get guns smuggled into prison. They can't keep drugs out of prisons, right? There are guys who... I've had clients who have gone to prison for non-drug related crimes who have become addicted to drugs in prison because we can't even keep drugs out of our prison. So I would love to see the debate advance to a point where we can all agree on one point. Bad guys are going to get guns no matter what we do. And we're going to have problems with bad guys who take guns to do bad things. And then let's talk about what should we do about this now? How do we deal with a bad guy with a gun? And I can tell you how you can't deal with him. You can't deal with him the way the principal at Sandy Hook was forced to deal with him. Right? You can't deal with them unarmed. You can't deal with them with a knife. You can't deal with them with a baseball bat. You can't reason with them. And you can't call the police unless you're happy with 27 dead.
Didn't we just talk to somebody yesterday who told us that he got into a knife fight, but luckily he had a gun? Well, someone we
did get some. Oh yes, we did get a story about that. Somebody came into the law firm and told us a story about how he was somewhere and he watched a guy with a knife do something to another fellow in a car. Mm-hmm. And then this guy came up to him and stuck the knife in his face or something.
He said, "What are you going to do about it?"
Yeah, what are you going to do about it? This guy pulled out a gun.
And the guy
I know exactly what I'm going to do.
And then the dude with the knife went taking off running. This guy's got a gun.
Yeah, and we kind of joked about how bad it is to bring a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah.
But I mean, look, guns are tools. They're neutral. They're kind of like technology. We could do a show on whether technology is good or bad for freedom. And the truth is, technology is neutral. It can be used for good things, like the internet, like access to information and getting articles out and things like that. It can also be a bad thing. It can be used for spying, and it can be used for surveillance, and it can be used for drones and all kinds of other things. Guns are the same way. They can be. So what are we going to do? Because technology can be used for bad things, we're going to ban technology? Go ahead.
Kelly from Rochester says the only way to have peace is to own a firearm, because this makes a statement to somebody who wants to not have peace that you'll do whatever it takes to maintain your peace for yourself and your family.
Yeah,
and that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing, it's just part of being an American. There was a great quote that I ended my article with that I want to put out over the air because it's or over the internet, I suppose. I like this quote. I came across this quote. I've heard it years ago, and I had forgotten about it. And it's by one of my favorite founding fathers, one of the more radical guys. You know who I'm talking about, Mike? Someone in the Sons of Liberty.
Yep.
Who am I going to quote?
Thomas Jefferson.
No, not Thomas Jefferson.
I would have said Thomas Jefferson too.
Thomas Jefferson's definitely one of my favorites. I talk about him more than I talk about
Hancock.
No, I like him because he was short like me, and he was a smuggler. I like that. Who do I like to go visit when we go to Boston?
John Adams.
Close.
Samuel.
Sam Adams.
Oh, yeah.
Man, I would like to talk to Sam because Sam Adams was one of these guys in the Sons of Liberty. He was a real
He was ferocious.
Ferocious freedom guy. And we go and we visit his grave.
Yeah.
And I put a rock up on his grave. And he's also, there's a great statue of the guy over at Faneuil Hall. If you ever get to Boston and you go there, don't just whip in there and eat the good food. There's this great statue of Sam Adams out there, and it says something wonderful at the bottom. I always take a picture of it. It says, he helped organize the American Revolution. I get choked up just thinking
how would
about
you like to have that as your moniker?
Wow.
He helped organize the American Revolution. So here's something that Sam Adams said. It's the last words in my article here that I'm going to release here in a day or two. Here's what it says. If ye love wealth greater than liberty, the tranquility of servitude greater than the animating contest for freedom, go home from us in peace. We seek not your counsel, not your arms. Crouch down and lick the hand that feeds you, and may posterity forget that ye were our countrymen.
That's awesome.
Oh, that's the attitude that real Americans have.
Yeah.
That's what America's about. What are we doing? If Sam Adams was here and he knew we were even talking about banning firearms from peaceful Americans, we're even having a discussion in America.
It's disgusting, isn't it?
And Americans are proposing taking firearms away, not from lunatics like Lanza, but from Rhonda, who was raped, from Tracy, who just figured out how to use her .22 and is now a responsible gun owner, from me, who has an AR-15, because you know what? I like an AR-15. I served the United States Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps. When I was sent to Desert Storm and lived in a hole in the front line in the border of Kuwait in a dirt hole, my AR-15 is what I had with me. I'm a little nostalgic about it. That's my weapon right there. You would take that away from me? A peaceful American who's never used it in any way, never would use it in any way that wasn't peaceful?
I'm disgusted right now hearing
You are
that.
going to get Tracy something better than a .22 eventually, though, right?
I mean, at least a 38.
If I have enough.
Well, it reminds me of a
Courage.
story years ago when I bought a little pistol to carry concealed. I bought it, and I asked the guy at the gun store that I bought it from. I said it was a .25 actually, and it was an auto. And I said, well, how is this? You know, I want to have something that's easy to hide. I said, well, let's make somebody fall down. He paused for a minute. And he looked at me. He said, well, it may not make them fall down, but they'll do some strange things while they're standing up.
That's cute.
and 22 probably, just about the same.
I don't know. I got to say, I don't think that I would underestimate the power of that .22. That thing sends a pretty good round out, and I think it depends where you're hit. But if you're hit in anywhere in a critical area with that .22,
no, but with training too of accuracy training and real life kind of situation kind of training, that .22 should be fine.
Yeah, I mean it's not gonna punish him on the way out like my .40 with the hollow tip is, or my shotgun. That does some good. That'd rip a nice hole. But
most of the time you get shot, I don't care whether you're still gonna
run.
Gonna know it.
As that .22 bounces around inside them, though, it'd punish them a little bit.
Yeah, it sure would. I sure
I
wouldn't
want to get hit by it.
Neither would I.
I wouldn't either. No.
But I would just put out there for all you gun control advocates out there, think a little bit about what Sam Adams had to say. Just think a little bit about what it means to be an American. Think a little bit about what it means to be free. I mean, being free. It requires a little bit of risk. It requires a little bit of danger.
A lot of people out there now are so out of touch with Sam Adams. They think it's just a beer.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not just a beer. It's a certain way to think about freedom and a certain way to think about what America's about. It's a way to think about the world, and freedom isn't about living your life, forcing everybody to live your life and live their lives in ways that you think is appropriate. That's not what freedom's about. Freedom is a lot about tolerating the fact that other people do things that you might not like. Freedom is an attitude about individual rights, individual responsibilities, being in charge of yourself, taking some responsibility. I mean, I think it's sort of an American notion to say, look, I'm going to take some responsibility for my own safety, the safety of my wife, the safety of my kids, the safety of my possessions. I don't have to pick up the phone and hope someone with a badge shows up on time to save my butt. I mean, look, they're our agents. They work for us, and it's great that they're there and they have important jobs. And I don't want to have to be prepared to defend myself at all times in all places. And I'm sure there are people bigger and badder and faster than me, and I'm glad that I can call on people who will come and protect me. But I don't want to delegate 100% of my responsibility to protect myself and my family. That's un-American
Mark,
to me.
Let me ask you a question, Mark. What are people really think? I can't even understand what they're thinking when they even think that it's a possibility of a good thing to take away and ban guns. What could they possibly be thinking?
They're not thinking
that there are no criminals. I mean, are these people? I don't even know what to say.
Well, look, I think that there's a difference, and lots of times people who are libertarian-minded, like we are, we get accused of being utopian. They'll say things as, well, that's not going to work perfectly. It may not work perfectly. It may, life isn't perfect. There's still going to be problems. There's still going to be bad guys. There's still injustice in the world. Things aren't going to be perfect. And I think it's good to strive to make things as good as possible. I mean, what do we want at the end of the day? We want free, competent adults to be able to figure out for themselves what it is that makes them happy. And then to be able to pursue their happiness, right? That's what it's about. It's to be able to pursue your own happiness. Like it said in the Declaration of Independence, right? It didn't say to pursue this or to pursue that, because other people have different things that might make them happy. I might like A, might like Mike, might like B. He should be able to do B as long as he doesn't interfere with my ability to pursue A. I mean, why is that so confusing? So there's a little bit of risk. I mean, living in the world requires risk. Anything can happen at any time. Bad guys can do anything. No, guns aren't the solution to everything. They don't solve all problems, but they give you an opportunity to protect at least against things that we know the world encompasses, like bad guys with guns.
And by the way, Mike is the invisible guy that no one sees.
What? Oh. No, I've been switching between the camera angles there. Sorry.
Mike's not in the camera. Well, Joe, I think that we're running a little bit to the end of our extended 90-minute gun-related Attorney for Freedom show this week, and I mean
they could go for 6 hours.
Yeah, and I want to thank you for giving us an extra half an hour today, because it's a big subject and it's a timely subject and it's an important topic, and it strikes, I think, right to the core of what it means to be an American.
It still leaves me scratching my head though, going, what the hell can people actually think about getting rid of guns?
Well,
I can't grip it, Mark. Maybe someday someone will come up with something, but I don't think so.
You could say the same thing for the drug war.
Of course.
Why would somebody think
it's crazy
that you could actually get rid of all drugs in the world, just by saying they're illegal?
Makes me wonder if I'm crazy, thinking maybe I'm like one of the only sane people out there that I don't know.
Well, you know what? In America, Joe, the good news is in America, you got a right to be crazy as long as you're peaceful when you're crazy, right?
Peaceful, Easy Feeling by the Eagles. It just made me think I needed to hear that.
Hey, everybody. People of freedom out there, let's just keep beating the drum for freedom and keep beating the drum for peace. We know we're on the right side of this argument. That's why I'm not afraid to get out here on the air and debate with people. It's not because I think I'm a great debater. It's because I'm on the right side of the issue. We're all on the right side of the issue. I'm interested in hearing from you. I'm easy to get a hold of. You can always find me at attorneyforfreedom.com, attorney4, freedom.com, or you could just put Mark Victor into Google. I'll come right up. And thanks for listening to the show. Hopefully you'll tune in next week, and hold on to your guns tight, everybody.
Thanks,
Very
everyone.
tight.
Freedom is the answer. What's the question? You have been listening to the Attorney for Freedom radio show, hosted by the original man of peace and high-profile attorney for freedom, Mark J. Victor. See you next week, same time, for another dose of freedom. Until then, Peace out.